there's good times to jump ship and there's bad times to jump ship. I would always encourage anyone that is deciding, hey, I am going to make that jump away from a company, make sure you leave right. You have no idea, again, what conversation's going to lead to later. Leaving right is almost one of those things. I had a boss in front of me, that was eventually going to leave the company, and I felt like they did a good job, at least, of holding on until a good time in the company to leave. They made it very clear to me, I do not want to leave when things are bad, or my team's not, being most successful, or, because they didn't want anyone to inherit a bad situation, and they didn't want their team to have to go through that with a leader they weren't familiar with. That's the two things that I would say, especially at a higher level of management or supervision. Compare those compensations and benefits other places, right? Like, I think a lot of people inside of a company don't even understand all the benefits they have sometimes. I will tell you, in my company, I've gotten to this conversation with leaders in our company, and we start having a conversation, just a good, honest conversation, transparent. And come to find out what they're looking for, we offer that. You're just not utilizing that benefit inside of our company. And these are the people you need to talk to, be able to utilize that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. My name is Brad Stair, and I'm really excited for you to hear this episode today. Today's conversation is a continuation of the conversation I had with my friend, JT Scott. The first part of the conversation was about how do you identify if a company has a strong and positive culture? Whether you work at that company and you're trying to evaluate if the culture is good, or if you're looking for your next opportunity and you're trying to evaluate the culture that you would be going into, what are the things that you need to look for? How should you evaluate it? All of those things. But today, we continue that conversation and talking about something that JT is extremely passionate about, which is professional development and growing yourself, whether you're inside a company or as you're looking for that next opportunity. If you didn't get a chance to hear the first one, JT is the regional director of the Saxton Group. Saxton Group is a franchisee of McAllister's Deli, where they have locations all through Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas. And JT is in charge of 6, 7, 8 of them. I'm not real sure what the total number is, but a lot of them. He spent 18 years in the fast-paced world of hospitality, specifically in the restaurant industry. But if you were to ask him, he would probably tell you his biggest accomplishments is that he is the husband to his wife, Karen, and the father of 3 amazing kids, Carter, Sawyer, and Riley. He is also one of my very good friends. I see him all the time. We watch basketball games. We go have dinner. Our families interact a lot. We're in groups together. He's just an amazing guy, but you can tell that his passion is helping people grow in the industry. I'm really excited about this. So without further ado, here is the continuation of my conversation with JT Scott. Okay, so let's move to a topic that I know is something that you are really passionate about. I think it's what you would probably call almost your calling now. It's something that I think you really excel at, and your face literally lit up when you started talking about this next thing, and that is navigating growth within a company. And there's a lot of things there, nowadays, people our age and younger, especially, get called out a lot because there's a lot more people that are leaving companies and going to other companies and all of this. And they say that people aren't loyal anymore. Employees aren't loyal to their companies. I would also argue that it is true that in most companies aren't as loyal to their employees anymore. The age of people staying in places for 30 years and plus is becoming less and less. It's not impossible. There's a lot of people that have been there 20 years, 30 years, all that, but it's less and less. And so there is this feeling of lack of loyalty on both sides. But I think, and I know I've said this a few times before on this, but I love that idea of really taking ownership in your position and who you are and how you're contributing, what your value is, and how you're growing within a company. And I do think that's getting overlooked on an individual basis of really trying to emphasize that. And then if a company is not supporting that,
Right.
now you have a decision, which we'll get to here in a second, of whether or not you should stay or go. But if you're somebody who's either at a position now and you're frustrated and you're feeling like, my goodness, I have been looked over a bunch of times, I can't figure out what I'm not doing that someone else isn't doing, what are some of those things that you would suggest as far as really trying to navigate that growth within your company to make sure that you're in the best spot you can be to really ensure you're doing everything you can do?
Yeah. The first and foremost is make sure that you are aligned, but also you feel like your company culture is strong. Okay. Because I don't want to talk, honestly, like a lot of this does, points that I'm about to make aren't going to really make sense if, man, this company is just not, it doesn't have a strong culture. And that's not really what I'm talking about here. I would say if you're in a company with a strong culture, but you feel stuck in your current role, maybe here's some things of how you can either move up or accomplish what you want to accomplish, because it is different for everyone. I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, we have, assistant managers, we have what we call shift managers, which is, a little bit lower than an assistant, maybe not a full-time manager. We have general managers, we have directors, we have, every company has those levels, right? And maybe the person doesn't want to step up to the next level. Maybe it's not a level change. Maybe it's a department change. Maybe it's expand their knowledge inside the company. So you kind of have to do a little assessment of yourself. I would say first is, what do I actually define what you want? Okay. Because if you have this target of like, hey, one time I want this promotion, but I didn't get it. Well, I wanted to get to this bigger office, even though it's not a promotion, it just happened to be a space or something in the deal, but I didn't get it. Really define what you want. So that would be my first step. But above all else, I would say, kind of look at these things that I'm about to say. So first thing is master your role. I come across so many people inside my company and outside of my company, honestly, people I talk to all the time. And when I start hearing, okay, I haven't been able to do this and they won't let me do this, or my boss won't let me do this, and I start dissecting that a little bit, just as, a third party or objective person on the outside, honestly, most of the time, it's, have you really done well in your role? The leaders of a company are always looking for top performers. Okay. And those are people that aren't just going to be average at their job. Those are people that they feel super comfortable with. Honestly, if you have a strong company culture, the company leaders will probably seek that out of you before the opposite. I tell people this when it's like, hey, I wanted to have that promotion and they didn't even interview me for that spot, right? Well, okay, well, here's 3 KPIs that really mean a lot to the company, but you haven't even hit on, you're below average or average on all these things. That's probably not a person I'm going to look at for the next role, right? Because most of the time when you move up or you move positions, you're having to supervise those KPIs getting done in the right way. So I would say first, master your role. Second, build strong relationships inside of your company, inside of your department, inside of whatever, whether that's supervisors, whether that's, like I said, just talk to people. It's conversations. Everyone kind of goes to lunch at the same time in your office. Great. It's easy to reach out like, hey, can we have, I want to talk about, whatever. And understand that, there's people that want that conversation and there's people that don't. and you need to make sure you balance the right professionalism when we're doing those things. But also seek out mentors. Maybe someone that's been there longer than you. Maybe someone that's gone through the same career path that you are, and you want to get to where they are today. Those are important as you go through. This one's big for me. Communicate what you want with your supervisors. I think sometimes as supervisors, it's very easy for us to be like, hey, this person's killing it. Check, check, check. Not that we don't care, but it's one of those things. It's like, this is the person I don't have to, worry about. I have to worry about these other things that other people that I'm supervising to make these things. And we might think that you're just super content and happy, with your role and you're killing it. And why wouldn't you be happy and everyone's smiling? And, just make sure you communicate, hey, thanks for, that attaboy or whatever from a supervisor, but also, hey, how can I get to the next level? Or this is really where I want to go. And evaluation processes, they're big on that. If you're inside of a company, if you have that opportunity to have an evaluation, hopefully you do. Strong companies do allow you to do that. When you do get a self-evaluation or an anonymous survey sent to you, fill that out. Be very transparent in that, especially if it's not anonymous. There's no reason not to be. And then this is one that I was, I had to do as well, as develop new skills. So, try to find areas that are relevant to the career advancement that you want. Sometimes that's not easy, but sometimes there's a lot of resources inside of a company that they have sitting there and just no one utilizes, something that we do is tuition reimbursement. So you can go to, outside of work hours, you could go to class or go to get a certification in something, and the company is going to reimburse you to go do that. Like, that shows initiative to the company that, one, hey, this kind of aligns with their job. Like, this is pretty cool. And it shows that you're willing to kind of put some skin in the game yourself. Hey, you're going out on a limb and paying for this up front. Yes, there's an agreement that we're going to reimburse some of that, but it also shows just kind of that, keeping up to date. Every position's a little different, but just keeping up to date with new skills. If you would have told me, back when I started in this company that, third party delivery systems would be something that I need to do, or needed to know, we wouldn't even know what those were, but two, I actually became a DoorDash driver for a while because I needed to understand the ins and outs of what's going on outside the restaurants, so our restaurants could execute that at a high level. So that was something that my boss, brought up and was like, wait, you're a DoorDash driver? I'm like, yeah, and this is why I'm doing it right now. And I'm doing all my off time. I'm not doing this, on company time by any means, but it was something that I did that showed my company, hey, I'm willing to find out the answer, even if it's not, easy or something that, I'm not asking other people for it. I'm going to find that answer myself.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd say the easiest example of that for just about everyone right now is AI.
Yeah.
AI's here. It's not going anywhere. There's a lot of talk that it could replace a lot of jobs and all of that. And you can get caught up in that if you want, but it's more on the level of, okay, well, if AI is here to stay, most likely almost every company, if not every company, is going to utilize it in some form or fashion. And so if you can get out ahead of this and start learning AI, how it works, and then if you're even able to think ahead, and heck, if you can beat your company at this, you now have a big leg up here. But if you can think of how would AI benefit or assist our business to make it more valuable to the clients, to the customers, to be more efficient, to be, whatever that may be, that's a great example for a lot of people of, hey, AI is here to stay, and you should learn what it means and how it applies to your job and how could it affect your job and things like that. But that's a good for everyone. That's one that everyone should probably be looking at regardless, but especially when you're trying to grow in a company.
Yeah, and develop skills that aren't required for you to do, right? If you're ahead of the game and you see what's coming, ask to learn those skills. Don't be asked. If a supervisor is coming, especially if you're in a company and that's kind of part of mastering your role, right? Like if you're constantly being told, hey, you need to make sure this is done, hey, that timeline's coming up, hey, those are probably signs that you need to do some self-reflection as a employee and as a leader. Just, hey, what can I do to better myself and make sure that I'm really fulfilling the role that it is today, before I take on new challenges or things like that. So,
For sure.
doing it before asked, but also asking before being told is kind of one of those things.
Sure.
The next thing is just stay visible. This this is, if there was one of these that I would say, that kind of goes along with another one I'm going to say here, but like, if there's one thing that I can say, like, I took this to heart when I was trying to get to my position that I'm in. I just was around. If there was an opportunity, there was of course, if it's invite only, making sure it's invite only. But like, if it's not, be super confident and be around and add value wherever you can, no matter what. Just be there, be engaged, and just make sure you're there. As much as possible. It's especially around supervisors that have decision making skills of promotions. Be adaptable, embrace change and innovation as companies evolve. That's again kind of seeing where you're going. I kind of call it laying out the track in front of you. Make sure you're always laying track out so we have somewhere to go. Make sure you're seeing what's coming. Make sure the trend last year is probably going to be the trend this year if you're in the sales, those kind of companies. Seek out challenges. This is another one that I did a lot with. We were in a very high growth pattern when I was in the general manager role, and we were opening a lot of restaurants. This is something I kind of did, even though the financial component wasn't there for me personally, but I knew in the long run it was there. Kind of find those challenges again, kind of what we were talking about earlier about just be that person that is finding and solving problems and adding value no matter where you're at. If that's in the copy room, add value by, hey, make sure that paper's stock, whatever. It's just simple things. This is mastering your role, but deliver results. Hey, don't just say I'm really good at this. Also show it on paper. Find a way to show it on paper if you can. Promotions and those things really do come from people that are constantly bringing value to the business. Just those people that are really maintaining a positive attitude. And that can be difficult, especially if you feel like, man, I am stuck in this role. Like that is kind of one of the hard things that I feel like can really, really be there. But hey, at the end of the day, you can control your attitude. You can control what you bring and how you act in certain situations. And that really, as a leader, is something that I seek out a lot. Hey, this might be a tough day. This might be a lot of workload on someone. How are they acting, and how are they planning and executing these things that we're asking them to do? And a good leader will look at that and say, hey, they got through that. Let me try to pull some off of them maybe for a little bit, just to make sure the burnout, or give support, add another person to that team that will give support to those things as you go. So those are kind of the things. If you feel, how can I do those? I think the get some insights of those, what we can do, kind of moving forward when you're in your current role, or assessing, whether you need to stay or go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that. And even if you're assessing maybe where you were in your last position, did you do these kind of things? Was there one of these or a few of these that maybe unintentionally, or even you just didn't do, or unintentionally didn't do? Staying visible, I know, is a big one. I know with me, a lot of times with my personality and how I approach things, I would say when I would have, as a project manager, when I would have a successful job, I didn't stay visible enough. Yeah. I almost amplified other people to the point that I almost made myself invisible. I took on the challenge, but then because of where I was as a person and kind of some of the things I'd been taught as a kid and all these things, I kind of like made myself last and really pushed out praise to everyone else, which is great and needed even as a project manager. But I didn't make myself visible in that, hey, I drove this. Like,
Yeah.
and I wanted to make sure I didn't make sure people knew that. I always just kind of assumed that they would know it. And definitely wasn't the case. And thus, I didn't always get lumped into that, like, results were delivered because of him. Right.
Yeah.
So like,
The team is great, but you have to call out a little bit of the leader, and that, and
right.
hopefully that supervisor or whoever's seeing that, but there is definitely a balance and yeah,
Sure.
you, as a leader, you always want to put your team first. Hey, that's where the, hey, we executed because of them, but also I led, you have to kind of put that in. And that's that navigation balance a little bit
Yeah.
of just inside company professionalism, right? It's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
don't disappear, be known, there's okay.
Yeah.
Like confidence is one of those things that I don't see as much as I had in the past. I think
Mm-hmm.
arrogance gave confidence a bad name. And I think there's a difference, right? There's a difference between being confident and arrogant. If I hear 1,000 I statements in front of me instead of a we statement that, put in there at least a little bit, then there's going to be probably some, radar going off for me.
Sure.
But like at the end of the day, confidence is very, very attractive still.
Yeah.
It's just always will be.
Yeah. And the other thing that I love that you said, and I know that I'd had this conversation early on in this podcast, but it still sticks with me is, the mentor thing. And I loved when I talked to my friend about, him being an entrepreneur, and I asked him if he had mentors. And I had told him at the time, I said, I'd never really had one,
Mhm.
but I never asked for one either.
Right.
I never I never like snuck
never
it out.
Yeah,
Seeked it
so
out. Seeked it out. Oh
Yeah,
my
seeked it
goodness.
out. Yeah, no, it's all
I
right.
never, I never seeked it out. Like, I didn't ask. And then on the other side, I love that he said, understand that for a lot of these mentors, there's not a lot of upside for them,
Right.
or that there's going to be skin that you're going to have to put in the game in order for them to want to mentor you. It's going to come at a cost, and you have to understand that. And I just love that that's a part of it, of, hey, yes, seek them out, but understand that they might not just automatically say yes, because there's not a lot for them. It's time, and there's not a lot of value for them if they're just teaching you. So again, all of this goes back to, how can you add value to them? How can you add value to the company, and all those things. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, and with
Okay.
mentorships, like, honestly, sorry not to cut you off there, but
No.
with mentorships, you don't know how many other people they're mentoring. Usually a mentor
Sure.
has a kind of a full time, what I would call mentorship going on, where this is a person that I've been with, 5, 6, 7 years, and I've put a lot of, and so they're always, if they have the passion for that, they're always wanting to bring on, oh yeah, like, no problem, I'll definitely have that, because they want to see development no matter where they're at and what they're touching. So I would say, you know, again, like, it be okay. There is a life cycle most of the time. That's pretty uncommon to have, 7, 8 years with the same person mentor. And honestly, in some extent, they probably should push you on to someone, bigger and better than themselves. But understand that there is a life cycle there too. And everyone's time is valuable, to themselves. So.
Sure. So all this can kind of lead to something that I think is a big decision for a lot of people. And for a lot of people that is probably an audience here, you didn't decide to leave. A lot of people get laid off. A lot of people get let go for different reasons. But there are going to come times in everyone's career. I've had it. I know you've had to just consider it in the past, but like, deciding whether it is time for you to look for something else, or to try to push farther to grow in the company. So let's talk about that a little bit, as far as like assessing where you're currently at, or accessing other opportunities. Like, what would you advise people to do when they're trying to make this decision?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is look at the company and see where the growth potential is, and if that aligns with what, like I said before, really defining what you want, right? hey, it's a constant rubber band of you're going to have to give some up, and they're going to have and like sometimes that's wavering, but really where the growth is happening in the company is where those positions are going to be added. Also understand, especially if you're trying to do a vertical leap, every time a company adds a vertical person, that's overhead usually to what the revenue stream is, right? And so that's a cost. And so they're going to be investing in that position, and they want to make sure they're getting the best of their, what there is. But, make sure there's a clear path for advancement in the company that you're in. If there is, make sure that aligns with what you are. Make sure you're satisfied for what you are doing today. You'll never be more satisfied in something else. The old grass is always greener, somewhere else. But it's also, have you challenged yourself to be really good at your job again? Have you engaged with your team? Hey, the people that are your peers, those are the people that more than likely, if you're moving up in a role, you're going to be supervising probably. So you should probably have some common respect with them. Make that job easier when you get that, if that's where you're going, and how the engagement is there. I would also say try to evaluate with your peers as far as job satisfaction. You know, are they coming to you for questions? And that's fine if they aren't, but why are they not coming to you? So like you haven't, until they really come to ask you, most good peers are going to be like, wow, how are you doing so well in this position? And be open and super humbled about, hey, it was not always easy for me. This is what I've done. I know that might not work for you. Those things are always really important. And then again, we kind of beat it. I feel like we're kind of beating it down, but company culture, does the work environment align with your long-term career goals? If you're in a company culture that, man, it's just hard to go to work every day, it's probably not some place that I would want you. Or honestly, that company should be able to reach out to you and say, hey, this doesn't look like it excites you or you're passionate about this. Let's try to find something else for you. And so, um, you know, if you decide, hey, you just kind of assess that and say, hey, I'm good on all those, and there's not there. Um, you need to try to compare some external opportunities as well. Market demand's big in this. What is going on in the market? There's good times to jump ship, and there's bad times to jump ship. I would always encourage anyone that is deciding, hey, I am going to make that jump away from a company. Make sure you leave right. You have no idea, again, what conversation's going to lead to later. Leaving right is almost one of those things. I had a boss in front of me, that was eventually going to leave the company. And I felt like they did a good job, at least, of holding on until a good time in the company to leave. They made it very clear to me, I do not want to leave when things are bad, or my team's not, being most successful, or, because they didn't want anyone to inherit a bad situation, and they didn't want their team to have to go through that with a leader they weren't familiar with. That's the two things that I would say, especially at a higher level of management or supervision. Um, Compare those compensations and benefits other places, right? Like, I think a lot of people inside of a company don't even understand all the benefits they have sometimes. I will tell you, in my company, I've gotten to this conversation with leaders in our company, and we start having a conversation, just a good, honest conversation, transparent, and come to find out what they're looking for. We offer that. You're just not utilizing that benefit inside of our company. And these are the people you need to talk to, be able to utilize that. I mean, I've done that as well as when I started, kind of comparing, when I was deciding, okay, where do I want to go? I'm definitely, my big thing was, I'm not going to make this horizontal move. That was not something I was willing to do. I felt like I put enough time and resources into what I was doing that I really needed to be a vertical step for me. And yeah, I had a lot of headhunters coming and asking those questions, and recruiters, and saying, hey, we have this opportunity. And sometimes it was a longer conversation because it was going to be a vertical move, but a lot of times it's like, hey, it's kind of what you're doing now. We just want you to do it for a different company. And, when I compared those compensation and benefits, it just really didn't work for me. And then also the learning and development piece of that other company that maybe is seeking you out. You might have a great company culture right now of, man, they're sending me to a certain class or a conference every year, or, what are they doing to, invest in me constantly in my company? If they're doing that, I'm going to tell you, like, there's few and far between companies out there doing that consistently, especially the longer you are there. I think it's as important as to invest in the long term person almost more than the short term person, just because that's the person I get the most return on investment in. And we want to keep them engaged in that skill set and that tenure and those things. Um, those skill sets are important to a company for long-term growth, to keep those veteran people engaged. And that the
Mm-hmm.
best way to do that is to constantly giving them new challenges, but also giving them opportunities for personal growth is big. And then honestly, that's kind of the job part. I would say personal considerations is, again, work life balance, and like I said, there needs to be seasonality to go with that. Is your current job affecting what is important priority list outside of work for you? Then that needs to be in this equation. Um, you know, Again, leaving well as far as relationships and stability inside of we all, when we have a job, that's where we're at a lot of the time, right? Our family doesn't see us as much Monday through Friday or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
schedule is for your, consistently, these are the people you're around. And make sure that those, we leave right in the right way. And then, kind of balance this excitement versus comfort, right? So there's the opposite, right? Where, hey, maybe you are a person that's just looking for another job and not really, it's not about like a promotion, or it's not about more money, or it's not about all that. It might be a little bit about, I feel like I'm just kind of stuck and I haven't really done the right like I feel like I'm just going to always kind of be this, and that doesn't excite me to go to work any day. So kind of balance that out, and be honest with yourself, be really self-reflective, read, find material and read books that maybe excite you and maybe engage you in your current role, but also be very try to be transparent with supervisors you feel you can be transparent with. That is a two-way street. um, don't go throw up on a supervisor that you don't have a lot of professional relationship on. I will tell you that, like, it that does leave a little bit of liability on your part.
For sure.
Yeah. And so you don't want that to come back on you, where it's like, well, this guy said he didn't really want to be here, so I just went and found someone else, and it's easy to lay this guy off. That's not what we want, because the company's, but you do need to, you have those people that you can be transparent with, usually inside of a company, um, you know, as far as that, goes there. So I would just kind of weigh those things when assessing that. I think it's a big piece that I see, um, honestly, in the market today. I think there's a lot of, I think we went through this, the great recession, right, of COVID, right? And I hate even bringing up that word COVID, honestly, because
Sure.
I'm way past it. Um, but I think that did kind of, there were some positives out of that too. That, hey, I moved and I was able to step up in this company faster. I think for companies, that was kind of an eye-opening experience of like, oh, I need to make sure that our benefits and wages are consistently competitive, you know, no matter what the situation is. I need to stay up to par in the market, and I need to stay competitive, because not it doesn't take a pandemic to do this, but honestly, in the day to day, the next you know company that is basically like our competition can come on and say, hey, we're willing to pay these people for this role, and now you're looking to hire a bunch of people
Sure.
that and that's always a hard part of that as
Yeah.
well.
COVID obviously threw a wrench in a lot of things of, a lot of people were able to work from home. They realized that that was a possibility. They got to experience the fact that they were still able to get their job done without having to be confined to a cubicle, and that they had a little bit more flexibility of, hey, I can work early, I can work late, I can work during the day as long as I met my productivity. And I know that's a big discussion now because a lot of companies are trying to bring everybody back.
Mhm.
And a lot of people had tasted the ability to still do your job well and not have to drive to a location, not have to be in a cubicle and all of those things. And now there's a big push pull going on right now of companies are now paying for these buildings that nobody's in, and they're like, we got to bring everybody back. And then some feel that their productivity went down, but others feel it went up. And, so there's a lot of that. And obviously what you're describing is important to make those determinations in a rational manner and not in an emotional state, because it'll be real easy if something happens and you're upset to be like, well, our company culture sucks and our company stinks and I'm never going to get anything here and blah, 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 blah. But you're not thinking rationally at that point. You're just mad. And maybe if you slept on it for a couple of weeks, you'd really kind of say like, okay, well, it's not what I thought. Yeah, that stunk, but the grass isn't greener somewhere. I actually do have a good opportunity here. I just need to maybe change a couple things of my own to really try to make myself visible, as you said, and make myself someone who our bosses really see with a lot of value. So,
before we move on, sorry,
no, you're good.
I think it's important to have ownership in that. And I would say, put yourself in the shoes of the owner. If I was running this business, what would mean the most with my, mission values or whatever that are already there, right? I'm this person making the decision because there's so many exceptions when you talk about remote versus not, and there's a lot of things there, right? Like I'll tell you from the hospitality industry, like we had no choice but to go to work every day because, besides, a government entity telling us not to, we're just a human contact, hospitality companies, and that's just how it is. But I understand both sides of that too. And so I would just say, again, use facts, not feelings. Use your peer group, your friend group, your honestly, even competitors. Like if you have that cup of coffee with someone, ask them, hey, I'm too close to this problem. What do you feel like? I'm going to lay this out as, rationally as possible as I can. How would you feel about this? Or am I even down the right road? And I think that's important to have that group of people that you can do that with, professionally and personally.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we kind of land this plane, and thank you for your time. Obviously I can talk to you all day, but as we kind of land it, and we're kind of thinking of trying to give advice to people who are currently employed and trying to give advice to people who are searching for that next opportunity and really hopefully wanting to take a step as well as find a new opportunity, but they're really looking to put a foothold into that next company. What would be your advice first to people who are employed, but are maybe either a little frustrated or just looking to grow?
Yeah.
And then what would be your advice to people who are going through a job search and evaluating these things?
Yeah. So that's always tricky, right? I have a job right now. I'm trying to step into something else. How do I do that? Honestly, in a professional manner. I think there are a lot of feelings that come up with companies and applicants both when it comes to this. Like as a supervisor myself, I have this kind of, my teams are very energetic and everyone on my team I care about, but, I do have to kind of step back sometimes, especially when I do find out, hey, so-and-so is looking for another job. And, there's a lot to do with that. That's a whole nother podcast. But I would say the big thing is stay professional and discreet at the initial part of it. Keep it confidential. And when I say that, I would say keep it confidential from anyone at work unless they are connecting you with that person. And that needs to be a conversation you have with that individual. Like, hey, I want to do this right. I'm not even sure if I'm going to accept anything. I'm just kind of seeking out things right now. Make sure you use personal time. I've seen this one too many times of days off are fine, right? Your time is your time. But if you need to take a PTO day because it comes down on a PTO, make sure you're getting that approved. Make sure that's the right thing. Try to be as discreet as possible, not dishonest. If they ask you point blank, what are you doing? Like, hey, I got, something outside of work, hopefully that will, most of the time for most companies, that's fine. And then don't use company resources inside, don't be using, the company laptop to be searching all this stuff. Someone is always watching, especially in companies with, just firewalls and all sorts of third party stuff. There's someone always watching on that. That kind of goes along with using your own time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, lunch, like I said, that connection at lunch is fine. That's not company time. That's not, unless it's a company lunch or something like that. But just
Mm-hmm.
make sure you're optimizing those things. You know, if you're, make sure, we talked about this. So I'm going to kind of run through these, pretty quickly because you've done a great job on this podcast of kind of doing that. But, update your resume. People might see that publicly, but that's okay. People do that all the time. Network through the right networks. We've talked about that a lot already today. And then research opportunities quietly. Avoid engaging with employees that, are closely tied to your current company. Probably the person that worked for your company for 20 years and just went over there 6 months ago is probably a person you need to be very careful about,
Right.
strapping to, because one, there's probably a lot of feelings from the current company you're in, and then there might be some feelings of the company, coming out of, and then if you do decide, hey, you accepted a job and, all professional here, just think about your timing. Be honest with the new company. Hey, I want to leave right. And honestly, that's a great way to kind of see a red flag there too. If there is certain situations where, hey, I need a person in this spot at this time, but if they can't be a little flexible with that, I'd be, a new company not being flexible. I'm one of those people that, yes, I want someone in there by a current time, but I also need to know that if you leave right from the company you just came from, you're probably, if you have to leave at some point from my company, you're probably going to do the same, right? And you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
setting that precedence as a hiring manager too, of, well, I don't care about that other company, like I want you here
Right.
next week, well, guess what happens to you usually comes around,
Right.
plan financially, there is sometimes gaps in that. Are you going to be able to, are they going to pay out your PTO at your old company? Those things come into play. How to, maybe there's certain gaps in what you're, I get paid biweekly and now I get paid monthly at the new job. Those things need to come into play, because you never want to go to the new company and be like, oh man, you know, don't stress yourself out on those things right off the bat. And then stay engaged at work until the final day. Honestly, even past that, I don't have I don't have a lot of experience in this, but I have, had to leave jobs before. And I will say, as a supervisor and seeing people leave my team, there's been some good times and some bad times in that. But the ones that always impress me and the ones that I'm like, man, that person will always have a home here, is the people who always stay engaged. And man, they gave it all they had till the very last day.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's just as important too when someone asks you, especially if you're having a conversation about a current job or even a past job, try to keep it as positive as possible. There's nothing worse than having somebody just dog a company. And if you have the ability to spin an experience, even if it wasn't a great one, if you have an ability to spin an experience in a positive manner, here's what I learned. Even if what I learned is I wasn't a great fit there, and here's why, and it had nothing to do with them, it just wasn't aligned with me or whatever, that can go a long way. In fact, I've even had people in interviews be like, wow, that's cool. You were positive with each one of your experiences.
Right.
And it goes a long way and it gets around. People know people. And if you start going on about, I worked at this company, man, that boss was a piece of junk and he was just the worst. Well, that person may know that guy. And now you got no shot of ever going back ever. And plus he may know somebody of who you're talking to. And if they find out who it is, they'll call him up and say, hey, that's not a guy you want.
Yeah, that's a
And
PSA I would like to get out there is a lot of people start in the hospitality industry before they move on to other things in their life. And so, we definitely, be careful of how you treat your hospitality workers.
sure. Yeah. No, it makes total sense. You walk in with your little logo on and you're a complete jerk to people. People know
Yeah.
who you are. And it just goes a long way. And plus it doesn't look good on you when you're trying to get a new opportunity. And the first thing they ask you about is your past experience. And you just go on and on about all this negative BS. And then they're like, well, okay, well, then what are you going to say about us? Like, that's what I would think if I was them. So anyway, well, JT, as I mentioned, I could talk to you forever, and I probably will. But like, thank you so much for coming on here. And I know it's a holiday and all of that, and just thank you for this, because I knew that I wanted to talk to you, and I knew that there was a lot of things that I just obviously admired about the way you treat your people and the way that you work hard and all of those things. I've seen it up close for a long time now. But just hearing this, you can tell why. In fact, I said this to Megan after we met, kind of to talk about what we were going to talk about. I said, I've always known that you were really good at what you did. It was obvious. But when you showed up the way you did with as much information as you did, and I said, oh my gosh, like I can tell why he's a rock star. And so thank you for bringing that and for helping people, because I know that people will hear this and really start to think like I am right now, thinking about that next opportunity and saying, okay, well, I want to do these things in the next time. I want to ensure that I'm doing these things in the next opportunity. So thank you for that. And, yeah, man, I'd have you on all the time if I could. So.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Brad, and I think you're doing a great job with this. When you first brought up this to me, honestly, I was like, man, I don't know if you can really make this, a thing, and I didn't have a lot of experience in here, but I can tell you this, like, I am passionate about what I've spoke with today, but really to me, it's just anyone in any field that just as a leader just needs something or whatever, and I'm as the listeners don't know this, but I keep a really tight friend group. I don't have a lot of like real close friends, but I do have a lot of people in different industries that I talk to consistently. And it's not that they're not friends, but they're just a different, circle in that. But
different levels.
But I'll tell you, if anyone's listening, and they do need, they want that cup of coffee, or they're looking for, hey, some advice in a certain field. The nice thing about the hospitality industry is I do come in contact with a lot of people that are in different, different ways of life and different seasons of life, and then also different industries. Because everyone has to eat, and that's what's nice about my industry is everyone has to find food, and I like to connect food with people, and so it just happens to be the catalyst that I get. So if anyone is looking, I don't have a huge social media presence, but you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me, with the bio on this, probably the comments of the podcast here. So feel free to reach out, but also, listen, share this with as many people. And that's not just because Brad's my friend. I've enjoyed listening more than I honestly, I was like, I was kind of listening to be moral support for you at first. Sure. And then I'm like waiting for that next episode to come out. So I appreciate it, Brad.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. There's a lot of people that that have a heart for people, and they want to help people out, and they see people that are struggling, and they see what the market is, and they see that, and you even see the negative comments on LinkedIn. You see hiring managers that'll start blaming job candidates, and blaming them for different things that they have, right? Which is just, it's demoralizing to see, especially if they're in a place of power where they can really affect other people's jobs. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people out there that want to just offer a bit of advice and try to say, hey, and just encourage people like, hey, you're doing okay, and you're going to be fine. And like, it's going to be rough, but you're going to make it through. And so it's really cool to see. And this has been fun, but yeah, man, we'll talk again down the road here soon, but thanks again. And we'll talk soon.
Appreciate it.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Job Seekers Journey podcast. I want to thank JT for coming on. I want to thank him for his friendship. I want to thank him for his knowledge. And I want to thank you for his passion for being willing to help those not only that are currently employed, but for those that are looking for their next opportunity. This podcast has been an amazing journey, and it will continue to be an amazing journey. And that is because of the amazing guests that I've been able to bring on here. Their heart for people, their heart for wanting to help bring knowledge to people. And JT was no exception, but there are so many great ones that are coming up. If you are listening to this and this is your first time listening, first of all, thank you for listening. Thank you for hitting the play button. If you've listened to multiple of these, thank you for being willing to continue this journey with me. If you know someone who is going through a job search and could use information, maybe a little discouraged because the job market is difficult or the results aren't happening, or they just need someone who is in their corner, please forward this podcast on to them. If you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, any of those, please do me a favor and rate and review it. That helps it get in front of more people. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, place a comment, help get that conversation going to try to bring more information to those that are looking for their next opportunity. Last but not least, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see me wearing an Oklahoma City basketball hat. The Thunder, our beloved Thunder from Oklahoma City, where I'm from, are in the finals starting June 5th, which will be the day after this episode comes out. It's an exciting time in Oklahoma City. Go Thunder. Hopefully we get to bring a championship for the first time to Oklahoma City. But with that, we're going to go ahead and end this episode. My name is Brad Stair, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.